Okay, I'm going to show you how to make a tablecloth and put it over the top of this table. So, this is something that's really cool, this tablecloth simulator. So I'm going to introduce this simulator to you, which is basically you create an object, you give it some physics, and you push play, and it falls down and wraps around the table, this tablecloth. It's really cool. We did create this table and spend a lot of time working on this wood texture, so you might be thinking, why would I cover it up with a tablecloth? Well, it's to teach you the simulation aspect of Blender, first of all, and I think you'll really like it, and then you can decide later if you want to cover it with a tablecloth or leave it wood. That's fine. But let's get going on this simulation. There is quite a bit to it, and so I think you'll like it, and let's get started. So you got to find your table and get that going. I'm just going to switch this view actually to solid, just so I can see it a little better. I'm going to add a plane first of all. So Shift A, plane. I'm going to drag it up above the table a little ways, and then wherever it is, yeah, stick it above the table. And then I'm going to go to a top view, 7 on the keypad on the right side, and I want to make this bigger than the table. Obviously, a tablecloth would be. So I'm going to scale it up, pressing S, and I'm kind of looking at the sides. This is not square, obviously, but the sides I'm going to bring out to about right here. Just kind of eyeball it and put it over the top of the table squarely. And then I want to scale top to bottom on mine, and so that's the Y-axis. I'm looking down here. This green is the Y-axis, so I'm going to press S, then Y, and scale it up. Now I can't see the table, so I can't tell how big I need it, so I'm going to press Z on the keyboard to get into wireframe mode, and there I can see it, and now the proportions look pretty good. I'm just going to scale it by pressing S. So I want the tablecloth to fall over the table kind of far, or not real far, just a little bit, so that looks probably pretty good. I'm going to press Z and get out of wireframe mode, and I'm going to bring it down over the table so I can kind of see how much cloth is going to fall over the table. That's probably pretty good, and this is all preference anyway, how big you want this thing. But it does have to be bigger than the table, otherwise it won't really work. So I'm going to drag it up just slightly over the table. When I drop it, I don't want it to fall too far before it hits the table, because that takes lots of computer processing power. So I'll just put it right above the table, and then let's add a couple of things to this to make it look like a cloth. So we're going to add a few modifiers here. So the wrench tab is the modifiers. The first modifier I want, actually before I do that, I'm going to go into edit mode. So press tab into edit mode. We need to subdivide this a bunch. So it's kind of like putting loop cuts, but instead of 1 or 2 or 3, we're just going to subdivide the thing a bunch of times. So make sure you're in your tools over here on the left side and click subdivide once and twice and 3 times. I want these squares, so it's just adding more faces every time I subdivide it. But I want those faces to be kind of small, because when it falls, it's going to use these edges and vertices and stuff to bend. It can only bend at those points, and so it won't bend very much if I don't have a lot of faces. And I don't want to go too far, because then it just takes up more memory for the computer when I run the simulation, or more processing power. So it's and then it will crash. So it's kind of a balance. So that's pretty good. I've got a lot of squares there. We're going to try that right there. So just subdivide it several times until you get it something like this. Like I said, don't go too far. It will crash, and depending on your processing power, it might crash. I don't know. We'll see, I guess, now that you're at home and you're not on the school computers. So let's see here. Okay, we've got it subdivided. Tab back out to object mode, and we're going to add a couple modifiers here. So the first modifier, let's put the cloth modifier right here, and we'll go into the settings of that a little bit later. Let's add another one and do solidify. This one just gives it some depth. So it was just a plane, now it's kind of like a flattened cube, and that's the thickness of the cloth, and that looks a little too thick, so I'm going to come right here and just click and drag right in the middle of this thickness option, and I'm going to get it pretty thin right about there. Looks good on mine. It depends on how big your table and your cloth are. So I've got that, and now this is not adding faces to it like a cube. If I tab into object mode, it's kind of hard to see now because it's so thin, but see, I can only select faces on the top still. So there's thickness, but it's kind of fake. It's a modifier. It's modifying it. Unless I apply it, then it will make all those faces, and I don't want to do that because that would be 6 times more faces than I have right now, which would be bad. So I'm going to press tab and go out to object mode. The last modifier I want to put on is the subdivision surface, as we do for most things to smooth it out. And I'm just going to add it, make a level 2 subdivision surface modifier. All right, so now I'm ready, just about ready for the simulation. Now I'm going to go back to this cloth thing, and in fact I'm going to go to this physics tab over here on the far right side. You can increase the size of your tab if you don't see it, or use the scroll wheel like I did. Click on it, and it's got the cloth all ready to go. There's a lot of options here that you could play around if you really wanted to, but I'm just going to show you a couple. On this default, I forget what it's called by default, click on it and you can choose different types of material, and that gives you different settings down here, kind of custom settings. I'm just going to click cotton for now. You could play around with it if you want. Steps quality, I'm going to go up to 10. Unless you have like an older computer, I would keep it simple and just probably go with 5, but you can play with that if you want and try it. So I'm going to go up to 10, and I'm going to leave everything else the way it is for now. Actually, I am going to change one thing. This right here, cloth collision, is checked, which means it's going to collide with other things that have a collision on it, which we're going to do also. I'm going to open that up, and I want it to self-collide, meaning it's going to collide once it bends and folds. I don't want it to go through the cloth. I want it to hit and collide with itself. So self-collision, let's check that. And I think we're ready to go, except we need it to collide with the table. If I drop it now, it's just going to drop right through the table and through the floor. So I'm going to click on the tabletop object and click collision, and that means it will collide with that object right there. I could do all these other objects, but ultimately I'm going to, it might go through those at first, but I'm going to, once it goes into a resting position, it's not going to be colliding with those. So I'm not going to worry about those for now. So I'm going to select the cloth again, make sure that cloth is selected, and right down here we have a timeline for animation. If I click and drag, I can drag that timeline marker to whatever frame I want. We're going to use this timeline, so I'm going to click back, this back button, and it's going to jump to that first frame. But now I'm going to press play on this timeline, and this is where the magic happens. This is really awesome. So it's going to fall down and collide with this table right here. Check it out. And it's going really slow, unless you have a really fast processor. Oh, mine's going really slow. Here's my frame rate right up here, which is nowhere near the standard 24 to 30. But look at this. It's wrapping around. It's falling on that table and then wrapping around. See how it's going right through those legs? It's not colliding with it because I didn't put a collision on it. That's because I want it to wait until it kind of goes to a closer to a resting position. I probably don't want to wait the whole time. But this is simulating this cloth falling and wrapping around the table. It's pretty amazing. Okay, I think I can get a good spot that I like out of that. So I'm going to stop it by pressing or clicking pause right here. It's kind of flipping up still, waiting to go back down. But what I can do is just click and drag on the timeline and get it to a spot where I like it. So I'm going to make sure everything is kind of mostly facing down right there. See, that looks like it's pretty much resting right there. Okay, so there's my simulation, and now I have a nice cloth over the top of my table. One thing I forgot after I did the subdivision surface is to choose the smooth shading, and that makes it look a lot better, a lot more smooth. Okay, there it is. Pretty amazing, isn't it? So now, with regard to these modifiers over here, some things I never apply. I almost never apply the subdivision surface. That's not the modifiers, is it? In the modifiers, Subdivision surface, I'm not going to apply that. And solidify, I'm not going to apply that either. I'm just going to let those be how they are for now. They're simulating different things. The cloth, however, I probably want to apply just to get rid of all this cached stuff down here. And so once I find a good spot for it, you don't have to do this, but I sometimes do. And so I'm going to apply that by right here. Clicking this button right here, apply. And then it gets rid of all that stuff. Look, the timeline is no longer there. The simulation is gone. All the cached memory is gone. And now I'm not lagging or anything. So there's my cloth. I can do whatever. Now it's just a regular object. And I can move it around. I can go into edit mode. And I've got these faces and I can change it. But I've got it how I want through the simulation. It would have taken me forever to model all that. So the simulations are pretty awesome that way. And then I can even put material on it. Like if I wanted a color, I could just add a color to this tablecloth. And then if I do my temporary render, there's my table with the tablecloth. Pretty awesome. I can even add an image texture to it, like checkered color tablecloth. So lots I can do with that. But that's the simulation. That's the tablecloth. Once you get it, render it, and you'll submit it.